let's say Zoom disappears. Let's say Slack disappears. And all of a sudden, the formats that we use in the community are gone. Community's still there. The community's in the hearts and minds of the people. The value you bring to those communities, the relationships, the content, the assets, like the hearts and minds cannot go away.
Hi, welcome to SaaS Half Full, the only show serving B2B SaaS marketers. I'm Lindsay Groper, EVP at PanBlast, and as always, I will be both your host and bartender today. I'm joined by Matt Heinz, the founder of Heinz Marketing, and today we're talking about how to build a community. Now, Matt is the founder and the moderator of the CMO Coffee Talk community that is over 3,000 members strong and has a Friday weekly Zoom call that draws anywhere between 300 to 400 CMOs. Pretty successful community. So he's going to talk to us about best practices and do's and don'ts as you think about building your own community and how to ensure that it is about the community itself and not you. So if you care to, grab a drink and join me as I speak with Matt Heinz from Heinz Marketing. Hey, Matt, welcome to SaaS Half Full.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I know. I don't know why we haven't done this before. You host a podcast. I host a podcast. We've known each other for years. We both work in the SaaS marketing space. So seems like it's something we should have done. I was just telling Matt before I hit record that this is an unusual podcast episode for me because, as you all know, no matter what time of day, no matter what day of the week, no matter the challenge, I always have a drink on this show. And I'm not going to lie to you today and say that I do. But I do not have a cocktail today. Matt, we are in a brand new co-working space and it's very cool. There is a cocktail and beer vending machine. And I was planning on hitting that up right before the episode, but it only took coins. And boy, I was just fresh out of coins. So I don't have a cocktail, but you don't either, right?
I got a whole bunch of questions about a coin-operated liquor dispenser in a co-working space. There's a lot to unpack there. But yeah, no, as we record this, it is noon Pacific time, so I'm still hydrating.
Yes, he is. He has a beverage. So this is new for me, but we'll make it through. Luckily, I know Matt and I don't need to have a cocktail buzz to have a good conversation. Matt, thanks so much for joining us. We are going to talk about a topic that shockingly we have not tackled on this show because it's one that we have a lot with our clients, but we're talking about the value of building a community and how to do that, do's and don'ts, because Matt is one of the founders and administrators. Administrators is not the word. What's the word?
Moderators?
Moderators of, all those things of the CMO Coffee Talk network. And I know that many of you listening are a part of that and are very familiar with it. But in conversations with our clients and even me on the front lines of client acquisition with prospects, we do talk about this a lot. And I have never created a community. I can just give my opinion on the ones that I'm a part of, but I do feel like CMO Coffee Talk is a very, very good case study on how to do it right. So we're going to talk about that and unpack that. But before we do, Matt, can you give us a little background on who you are, what is Heinz Marketing, and how and I guess when and why you started the agency?
Oh boy. So, I've been in marketing for most of my career, started as a journalist, went to the dark side through PR into Microsoft, into sort of B2B marketing. And about 16 years ago, decided to sort of hang up a shingle, do it my own thing. And we've kind of grown from there. Our focus is helping companies with long, complex sales cycles build more predictable pipeline. So companies that feel like they're doing random acts of marketing that aren't generating what they want, have a lack of predictability about what the pipeline is going to generate as they grow the business. There's a lot of system process playbooks that really drives that for companies. So we're project-based consultants that help with that. And our purpose as a business, as we stated, is to positively impact careers and lives by enabling work that matters. And I think a key part of our focus with that is to help more marketers embrace revenue responsibility. And no matter what they're doing, from demand gen programs to PR to communities, to tie that back to creating repeatable, predictable, and scalable marketing-driven revenue impact for your organization.
And one of the things that I've always found really interesting and unique about your agency is that you come in, you audit, you make recommendations, you optimize, and your goal really is then to hand over the keys of this well-oiled machine to the teams that can then execute it, which is, to me, a very different model. Like, you are literally trying to set your clients up for success and show them the way.
Yeah. I mean, as a business owner, like having more recurring revenue would certainly be nice. But I think that for the nature of the work that we do, it's better to be project based because our clients need to take what we build and teach them and make that the DNA of their marketing organization moving forward. They need to make that something that is internal, not external. And so there are plenty of partners that can help with execution ongoing, but the strategy process playbooks, we can get them up to speed, but then teach them how to run it so that it's part of their core competency and muscle moving forward.
I love that. All right. So let's talk about CMO Coffee Talk. I know that I have been a member of it for at least 6 years, maybe.
Well, yeah, it's
some form.
Yeah. So what's interesting is the community started well before we sort of started calling it CMO Coffee Talk.
Okay.
We had been running, Heinz Marketing, we'd been running a series of CMO breakfasts around the country where we would get CMOs together for 25, 30 people for breakfast. And just kind of, it was a familiar format to what you see sometimes in the CMO Coffee Talk sessions now. It's, no pitching. It's just CMOs talking to CMOs, sharing what's going on in their business, sharing best practices and ideas. We started doing those just for biz dev for our own agency. And then we started getting, tech companies saying, hey, we want to meet CMOs too. If we will pay for the catering and for you to fly around, will you do them in other cities we care about? I'm like, yeah, sure. So we started doing that. And fortunately, we were in the midst of a 10-city tour sponsored by 6 Sense at the beginning of 2020. Not fortunately when the pandemic hit, but fortunate that we were working with 6 Sense because Latney, now the CRO there, she was a CMO at the time, she and I shared a very similar perspective in terms of what community can be and should be. So we got through 8 of those 10 cities. COVID shut us down. We decided to do one final virtual breakfast on a Friday morning. And I think we had 28 people there. And it happened to be the week that COVID got real, right? I mean, the NBA shut down. Tom Hanks announced he had it. And so Friday morning, people did not want to talk about digital transformation, Lindsay. They were just like, heads were exploding. People were crying. And so we had an hour conversation. And like an idiot, at the end of it, I said, well, that's great, guys. Thanks for coming. Good luck with that. And someone said, next week going to be a shit show too, Matt. Can we do this again next week? And I said, yeah, sure. So it really, what the community is today started with the breakfast, but it really gathered momentum in that crucible, the beginning of the pandemic. We had created a Slack channel for the breakfast we called Between the Bacon, which was meant to be sort of a place for breakfast alumni to get together and share. But that really got momentum once we sort of started to have this like shared experience of the pandemic and leading teams and companies and industries and families through it. And it grew from there. So what started as, 28 people on that first call, we've got over 3,400 CMOs and heads of B2B marketing in the community now.
That is incredible. And still having the Friday conversations, it's topical, less obviously about a pandemic, but it still gets pretty heated and there's a lot of feelings depending on the topic. And there's 2 sessions, and between the 2 of those, it's not uncommon to have 300 to 400 people between those 2 sessions. So it is it's a large community, but it is a very engaged, active community. We've all joined different communities to try and gain value. And really the value lies in how engaged the audience is. And it's frustrating when you're part of a community and you put in an ask and no one answers, right? You have a question and nobody answers. It's like, well, there's no value there. And that just does not happen. If anything, it's like hard to get to all of the needs and leads and questions that are being asked. So those numbers are impressive. I love that. Talk to us about when you joined forces. So it was Heinz Marketing and 6 Sense. Did you and Lat talk about rules of engagement as the brands, so as the businesses behind it, on how we were going to brand it? What are we allowed to do, not allowed to do? Because I do feel like this is a place where a lot of companies miss the mark, and talk about that of how do you balance of owning it, but not overselling yourself.
Yeah. The primary brand is CMO Coffee Talk, not 6 Sense or Heinz Marketing. And that's intentional. We feel like if we can create a place where people are coming on a regular basis into Slack online and coming regularly on a Friday morning. I mean, if it weren't for that pandemic, I don't know that I would have had the audacity to think that CMOs are going to show up every Friday for a get together. But I think we've been able to maintain that because it's not about us. We don't talk about Heinz Marketing in the session. We have a very strict no pitching rule. in the community that applies to us too. Like if someone goes up and in that needs and leads says, hey, we could really use help with our account-based program, or we need to figure out how to get sales and marketing better aligned in our complex sale. I can't pitch that, right? We've maintained that strict guidelines the entire time. Those Friday sessions, Lindsay, as you know, are not recorded. We never record them because we want that to be a safe place for CMOs and only CMOs to be able to share and commiserate with each other. And as you said, like sometimes, like last week, we covered international expansion and localization best practices. So we'll cover like business things, and then we'll do things like imposter syndrome, right? Or sandwich parenting. I mean, there is a menopause channel in the Slack. How many professional communities have a menopause channel where people with shared life and work and personal experiences can get together in a safe place to share? And so I just believe fundamentally, and I'm so thankful that Latney did from the beginning too, that this will succeed for our businesses if we make it about the individuals. If we create a community that is not about being a CMO, it is about the person that is in the CMO role, which allows us to cover sandwich parenting. It allows us to cover imposter syndrome. It allows us to cover a wide range of topics and not make it about us. But if we're the stewards of that conversation, then we're going to get the credit for it as well, right? And so I'm thankful that Latney saw that, and I'm thankful that Sixth Sense has continued to invest to make it possible, paying for the Slack, paying for the infrastructure behind it. It's been enormous. I've seen a lot of other companies try to create communities but not have the patience or discipline to keep themselves out of it. And that is a very hard thing. I can talk about, I've got metrics that can show the ROI of the community here 4.5 years later after that, fateful day with the 28 people, but it takes time, and that patience and discipline, not a lot of people are willing to invest in.
Sure. When you formulated this as a community, right? So it grew from these 28 people and then made a Slack and then, made a CMO Coffee Talk. It sounds like you didn't go in with the goal of revenue generation out of the community. What was the goal of that? Just to really for other people to create a place for them?
I mean, certainly there was a biz dev component to it, but it was meant to be like, for 15 years, even well before we started the community, my philosophy around biz dev is just to be generous, right? Just to say, just answer questions, be open and honest with people, provide value, right? And I mentioned our purpose as a business, our stated written purpose, positively impact careers and lives by enabling the work that matters. And that entire statement matters to me, but the first half, positively impact careers and lives, where people with shared interests and shared jobs can share at the level of depth that they do. I mean, I can tell you that because of my association with the community, people may call me first if they have a project they have needs for. And I've got a Salesforce report that'll show me campaign members and associated pipeline. So that comes out of it, but it comes out of it by not focusing on that. It comes out of that by facilitating a place people want to be part of and being associated with that value. So, it's sort of this thin line you got to walk. To say, you're going to continue to invest, you're going to continue to be part of this, you're going to continue to provide value on a regular basis. You're not always sure where and when you're going to monetize that.
Right.
So some of it is knowing that process works. Some of it's knowing that, you think about media replacement value. How much would you have to spend to have a 1-hour Zoom call with 400 CMOs every week, right? And so if you're a brand just thinking about how do I get pipeline, forget that. How much did you pay to get a bunch of bad customer one-on-one meetings at some conference somewhere? And so there's all kinds of ways to look at this and try to do the math to justify it. But at the end of the day, let's say Zoom disappears. Let's say Slack disappears. And all of a sudden the formats that we use in the community are gone. Community's still there. The community's in the hearts and minds of the people. The value you bring to those communities, the relationships, the content, the assets, the hearts and minds cannot go away. And I would imagine as we grow the community and sort of it continues to mature, technologies come and go, repositories of the content and conversations come and go, but that's not what the community is.
And the other really cool thing that shows the strength of the community is it's an online community, but through that, you've been able to spin up so many offline opportunities to connect. There are still breakfasts at certain events that are hosted by CMO Coffee Talk. And then the Empowered CMO Retreat has spun out of that as well. And for me personally, it's 3 degrees of coffee talk separation. It's like if I'm at any sort of event, I end up meeting someone and we say, your name looks familiar, and we go through the thing. And then it's like, it's the Coffee Talk Network. And there are folks who attend every Friday session. Like, I'm not one of those people who attends every Friday session, but when I attend, I see the same faces. So it is like part of their weekly routine and something they look forward to because they know what they're going to get, and it's repeatable, which is awesome. When you think back to the early days when it started, when you were, starting to scale, are there certain things that you look back on or that you remember like, wish I would have done that differently? Maybe some missteps that you made that others can learn from?
I almost didn't make it just about CMOs. When we did the CMO breakfasts, we would occasionally let like a senior director at a large organization come in because either there's someone we ultimately wanted to sell to or our tech partner really wanted to have in the room. But again, credit to Latney for, putting the foot down and saying, no, you have to make this unique to this audience. And with the other companies where we've helped them build communities that have similar sort of health and longevity, it's by defining a narrow audience. Like we've got a company in the legal space that has created a community for female in-house general counsel, right? That's not all they sell to, but they saw a gap in the market and a need for a community, and it's worked really, really well. Now, initially it was like, we want all general counsel. No, we want all lawyers, right? And they're like, no. If you do that, then the paralegals get in. Now it's nothing, right? And I've seen companies say, okay, we're going to do a community. It's going to be for all go-to-market people, sales, marketing. You can be a junior BDR. You can be a senior person. You don't have the discourse and trust and connective tissue amongst people when you make it for everybody. So you have to make it narrow. And I'm thankful that we did that from the beginning. The communities that we've seen and helped stand up really benefit by having sort of peer moderators as part of it, right? I think, Coffee Talk worked well from the beginning because I had a good network and could invite people in that had been to the breakfast before. Latney is a master networker and knew a lot of people, but also was a sitting CMO, right? So there's legitimacy there. If it was just Matt doing this as a consultant, I think it would have been different. I don't think we would have seen the immediate velocity we did without having a sitting operational CMO as part of that. So, that in-house general counsel group, like you have to have people that are in the seat that kind of agree to sort of be the spark, to be the early group. And over time, you start to get a little bit of natural gravity to the group as more people play that role, as more people are part of it. I mean, even as our community has grown, our metrics, we've had to grow at an exponentially higher volume to keep the same level of engagement online and in the Zoom. And so I think that that's a key part of this as well. It's just you're always recruiting, you're always looking for new people. But I will say that over half of the members of CMO Coffee Talk that come in on a monthly basis now are referrals. There are other CMOs telling their peers, you should be in this group too.
What are the criteria to enter the group? Because I would imagine as you are growing, to your point, you want to grow the community. And so you're getting people, getting referrals, getting invites, and it's like, the more the merrier, but you're still trying to keep it narrow. So what criteria should people have as they're looking to keep it narrow? Because for you, it was B2B CMOs, but can you expand on that?
Yeah. So growth is actually not a measure of success for us. Engagement is. You have to be a CMO or a head of marketing, VP or above to be in the community, bar none, right? And so there are a lot of people that we have to turn away. And we send recommendations of here's some other communities that we think would be good for you, but we've got to maintain the quality of the conversation. So I care less about doubling the size of it and more about creating enough value in terms of the content and conversations that people want to come back more. So for example, we just launched a new tool in Slack called Expertly that allows people to set up topics and particular community members and say, these are the topics and people I want to hear the most about. And they get a daily or weekly summary in email that says, here's the conversations you want to be a part of. So you don't, with the kind of volume we have, it can get intimidating if you've missed a couple days. So yes, finding a way for people to find the specific content they care about is critical. Ensuring that we have like 2 sessions instead of 1 to accommodate different time zones is a critical part of that as well. Does it take a lot more time? Yeah. Do I love getting up at 4:30 a.m. Pacific time in the morning? Actually, now I don't mind because I've just kind of gotten used to it over the last 4.5 years. But I mean, engagement is the key metric for us. If you define it that way and say, okay, like female in-house general counsel, not every company is going to have in-house general counsel. Not everyone's going to have a female doing it. But if you take a look at your target account list and the companies you want to sell to, and as you get some momentum, like do a proactive campaign, inviting people to this community. I mean, I can't tell you like how valuable it's been invaluable for me as someone who ultimately wants to sell consulting to B2B CMOs to not pitch a consulting project, but to offer access to this community, right? Just for the engagement and just for the lead flow and just as a way of sort of creating a conversation at the top of the funnel that is not about me, that is not about consulting, that is not about projects, but it's all about building value and rapport early and often. So there very much are concerted plays that we will run as part of that, but always with the idea in mind that the less we talk about Heinz Marketing, the better.
So I've picked up a couple things that probably go against what most people were thinking or are thinking when building a community, which is go broad and get a ton of people and focus on numbers, membership growth. And what I'm hearing you say is the opposite, which is stay niche. So stay very focused on who that audience is and focus on engaging that audience versus the numbers and growing that audience. I'm sure you have too. I mean, I've joined communities where it's just where you're putting questions into an echo chamber. It's just, there's no engagement, right? There's tons of people. It's not helpful, right? And I gave it about 2 questions before I bounce, right? I'm like, this is not valuable.
Well, and for it to be a safe place too, right? And part of that engagement, I think we've earned that engagement by keeping the list tight, meaning you have to qualify to be a member, to making it a safe place to be able to share and learn. And by really reinforcing sort of the no pitch rule as well. I think, for people to know that it's only CMOs in the group. So when you post something in needs and leads, or if you're looking for feedback on something, you're not going to get inundated by a bunch of agencies that are just trying to pitch you a solution that you didn't want, right? You're going to get other CMOs sharing in a format that they know is private. And so we have 4.5 years of sessions that we've never recorded, a potential treasure trove of content that if we were saying like, well, let's maximize our investment, we would be recording it and snippeting it and passing those out. But for the value of the community, that's not the right thing to do. Right.
And I was going to say the other thing that I find valuable, and I want you to talk about that, is all of these sub channels that are there. There is a place for everything. How do you create those or manage those? Do members create them on their own? Because there is literally, there's a place there's one that's just rants. And that's the place when you're just like uber pissed off about literally anything. It could be your boss, it could be a vendor, whatever. You can go barf it on there and everyone's, commiserating and misery loves company, but that's the channel for that. There's a families channel, right? Where you can talk about challenging, with parents. So it's that safe place, but the right place for what conversation you want to have. How do you decide what gets a channel, menopause being a new one?
Well, the way we have it set up, members can set up their own channels and do. I think I wasn't involved in setting up menopause, but someone did, and it sort of, it's apparently done very well. We have a pretty high bar for creating a new channel. I think we were really intentional up front of sort of thinking about what are the topics and categories where we think are the most conversations. And then sort of we have incrementally added channels here and there for different topics. We will have, for example, for conferences that a lot of CMOs are going to, we'll create a channel just for that conference so that people can plan together, so people can find each other on site. This will be the 4th year we've done a CMO Coffee Talk Fantasy Football League. So there's a channel for that for people to snipe at each other. But we otherwise try to keep it pretty tight. But you're right. We've got channels for CMO roles, right? We've got channels for job candidates. The rants channel is probably my favorite because it does go in all different directions.
Yes.
And I think this, Lindsay, we on Friday, we meet every Friday and we sort of informally call Friday First Sip Club, right? And First Sip Club is for coffee and learning. Once a month, we will schedule a midweek afternoon session we call Last Sip Club, which is for liquor and complaining. And it's kind of like the Rants channel live. And it sometimes gets a little inappropriate. So I'm really, really, really glad we don't record those. But again, just a place for CMOs to go and talk to each other and sometimes blow off steam, knowing that everyone else in the room has felt that, has been through that. 2 weeks ago, we did a session on toxic cultures. And the number of members who have been in them or are currently in them was kind of horrifying, to be honest. But for people to be able to share what they did, share what they shared about what they're going through, what they've been through, not only for them to get it off their chest, but for other people that are going through it to hear that they're not alone, to hear that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, I remember when we did the imposter syndrome session, at one point we did a little poll. So who in the group feels like you have imposter syndrome? And like 93% of people said yes. And I think the other 7% were multitasking and not paying attention. Because it's just, but I literally had a pretty large handful of people afterward come to me and say that I assumed it was me. I assumed it was just me. I assumed everyone else, especially in this group, had their shit together. Because I mean, you get to be a CMO of a B2B company. Like, you've had a successful career. You've done well for yourself. You have projected this aura about who you are and what you have done. And yet to a man and woman, it's like, oh man, I constantly worry that I'm going to get found out. And so to have a place to be able to have that conversation and at least to know that you're not alone, that's meaningful. And just the stories I've heard from folks that have talked about the conversations they've had with people and the realizations and the impact it's had on not just career, but on their life and sort of how they think about their priorities. It's a really meaningful thing. I think, I'm very, very thankful that I've been able to be a part of it, to be honest, because it's been really just the relationships, the friendships, and the impact it has been pretty awesome.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's therapeutic for the members.
A little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Based on some of those sessions that you're talking about, to be able to get your feelings validated is huge. I mean, it's like one of the reasons I do go to therapy is because, your feelings are validated and it's like, oh God, okay. All right, thank you. Okay, so it's okay for me to feel this way based on, experience. So it sounds like a lot of members are getting that out of the community, which I'm sure is not something that you necessarily expected or set out to do, but what a great byproduct.
Yeah. I didn't expect that. I mean, I think, back in the days when we were just doing the in-person breakfast, we certainly had a component of that. Like, we'd go to some cities and, people that maybe knew of each other got to meet each other for the first time or said, like, we don't self-organize into sessions like this. So to have someone that actually puts a date and time on the calendar and gets us together and to sort of be able to have conversations, sometimes about work, sometimes not about work, sometimes about how to negotiate your next, comp package better, like how to get into board roles. We've had conversations around, CMOs that are like, I don't want a CMO job next. I want to prioritize other things in my life and I want to leverage my experience and be a VP at a larger company. And where some people may see that as a step down, for that person, it's part of driving success and impact for themselves, for their families. And so being in a room to talk to other people that are thinking about the same thing, that may make different decisions about where they go, but at least to feel seen and heard on that, we would see that impact in the in-person CMO breakfast. And we still do now that we're getting back to doing more of those. But to have that on a Friday morning, every Friday, I think is part of the reason why people come back, because it's a conversation you're not going to have anywhere else.
Yeah. And certainly having strict policies and a no pitch policy helps there too. When members join, do you have a rules of engagement that you send to all new members that they have to sign? What does that look like?
We don't know. We do have a sort of set of intro content that sort of just outlines like, hey, no pitching. Keep it classy. And honestly, the group kind of self-polices on that as well. Like, I keep an eye out for anything that looks kind of pitchy, especially as, 4.5 years, you get, someone who was a CMO who's now doing fractional work. And if someone asks a question for something like, oh, I can help with that. Like, no, you still can't pitch. That's not what this is for. But I think there's a healthy amount of self-policing that happens in the community for people that sort of care about it and want to maintain it. So we do tell people up front what the rules are. And we have kicked a couple people out here and there who just either didn't get it or didn't want to follow it. It's one of the challenges of getting a community to this size and with this level of engagement is maintaining sort of that strictness of the rules that really keep it a safe place for everybody. And it's another reason why and one of many reasons why I don't focus on the growth of the group. I want quality members. I want members that are going to follow the rules, members that are going to lean in with each other. And that's part of how we get better engagement amongst the community on an ongoing basis.
We have covered a lot, and I'm going to put these on the show notes and on the sort of the do's and the don'ts and best practices. Is there anything else that we missed, words of advice when building or maintaining a community that we didn't cover?
And make it about the person. Make it about the individual. Make it about the person behind the job, not just about the job itself. A community thrives when it's people that really care about each other, where people are in a place where they really do lean in and support each other, help each other, care for each other. That can take time to earn that trust, but you can set the standards from the beginning in terms of the way you moderate the group, in terms of the topics you bring, in terms of those peer moderators that you select and help nurture that are themselves sort of setting the bar for what is okay to talk about here. I guess let it be human. let it be about the people. That's going to be a connective tissue that as long as you support that and maintain that, you can be successful.
And if you just cannot help yourself but to promote your own brand, create a shameless plug channel.
Yes.
Like in CMO Coffee Talk, where if you really just need to say something about yourself, there's a place to do it. And if people want to go in and look at it, they can. But like, again, there's a venue for it. To just call it what it is.
Yeah, it's kind of the release valve, right? Like we have two channels like that. One's called Shameless Plug. You're working on that you're proud of. And to be honest, like if you're a CMO and you've got something that's promoting your brand, like I as another CMO might want to be curious to see like, how did you do it, right? There might be a swipe file opportunity there. So Shameless Plug is for things you're working on. And then we created a channel called Amplify My Content, Please, for anything that people have written or produced. Like, I did it a couple weeks ago for an episode of Sales Pipeline Radio, our podcast, that I was particularly proud of. And so there's a place for that too. And so it makes it really easy then to say, listen, like everywhere, every other channel is for things you found elsewhere, but if it's your stuff, you got a place for it.
Yes, I love that. So if there are CMOs or VPs of marketing listening to this who are not part of CMO Coffee Talk, tell us how they can get connected. And then just personally, Matt, how people can find you and Heinz Marketing as well.
Yeah, same answer to both. I mean, just send me an email, Matt, MATT, @HeinzMarketing.com if you want to learn more about what we do. But also if you're a CMO or head of marketing and want to join the group, just let me know. And just as long as we validate that, you qualify based on the head of marketing, you're in. And then, just excited to be doing this with you, Lindsay, and excited to get you and or Mark into Sales Pipeline Radio as well to join our podcast group.
Yes, absolutely. And even though we don't have a cocktail, I'm still going to ask you this question because I do ask every guest to send us out with this. Do you have a signature or favorite toast that you can tell us to send us out?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I mostly just say like to your health, right? And just, just simple, just, this life is short. Life is fleeting. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Just let's do everything we can to make each other healthy and happy.
All right. Well, to your health, Matt.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Thanks again to Matt for joining me on SaaS Half Full. That conversation was way overdue. I am so glad that Matt joined me today. If you're thinking about building a community or already have one of your own, hopefully you took away a couple of best practices to help make that community more impactful for your members. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, bottoms up.